Justice podcast. And today we're doing a little bit of an introduction podcast. My name is Desiree Vargas. I am a co-founder of Racial Equity and Justice. I'm also a tribal councilwoman of my tribe, Iayagua, Taino people of the Caribbean. I'm also a program ambassador for United Nations Council of Indigenous Peoples. Also do a lot of racial justice advocacy. I'm an anthropology scholar, do some harm reduction work, some sexual assault survivor advocacy, and yeah, I'll pass it on to David.
Yeah, so my name is David Patrick. I am the other co founder of Racial Equity and Justice. I am a community advocate. Primary roles include working with marginalized community members and underrepresented populations, and really that includes BIPOC community members, those struggling with recovery, food insecurity, as well as working with unhoused community members as well. In addition to that, I am an avid community gardener and social worker.
Yeah, so we just want to share with you folks a little bit about what Racial Equity and Justice organization is doing throughout the state of Maine and in the greater Bangor area. First off, we are an organization that primarily was founded because we wanted to do racial justice advocacy. We also wanted to, be able to show up for our Black, Brown, Indigenous community members of color here in Maine, which is one of the whitest states in the nation. We thought this was really important, and we do a lot of community education. We also do a lot of redistributing of resources into the communities that are underrepresented and underfunded, and we also do a lot of other projects that I'll let David explain a little bit more of.
Yeah, so racial equity and justice is right. It's kind of a two-pronged approach to addressing inequity, equality, and creating communities in which BIPOC members can thrive. So, right, what we mean by a kind of two-headed approach is that we work on both sides of the equation. So we work to improve the lives of community members impacted by inequity, and we work with the community members who may most likely benefit from inequity. So how that work comes across is we do education, we work with large institutions, whether that's academic institutions, whether that's organizations, business entities, or municipalities. We work to provide them with skills and professional development, equitable problem solving, supporting them with whether that's city and local ordinances, whether that's policy development, or whether that's re-examining distribution of decision making and influence among community members of color and those most affected by a lot of the stuff that happens traditionally at local, state, and federal legislation. So we do trainings. I mentioned the workshops. We do a lot of hands-on work with communities. Our approach is to not just go in and point and say this is what you need to do, but really work with each community and tailor the solutions to the communities that are being impacted, and allow people to really use their own strengths to find solutions that fit their specific challenges. And so that's the the educational kind of side of things. On the other side of that, we work to create safe, equitable spaces for BIPOC community members. So,
Yeah, well said. I think besides safety, David also mentioned that we want Black, Brown, Indigenous people of color here to thrive. So that's a little bit where the redistribution of resources comes in. We want people to have, the healing modalities. We want people to have spaces where they can get together for socials and be able to practice their culture and live their culture and share that. We also want people to have access to certain things that inequitable spaces may not be able to provide naturally. So we also want to give people a space to be able to do what they love. We want we have a bunch of members now. Our organization has grown. We want to provide a space for Black and Brown Indigenous people to have media outlets, to be able to write and speak, and have a space to do art. And we also want people to be able to have access to spaces to be able to grow food and provide for themselves and their families, as well as and tell their stories. We have some of our projects look like we have a documentary coming out where people can tell their stories of racial injustice here. We have other projects that help support students and athletes, adopted family members of color. We have projects that really just across the board expand, just all encompassing issues and needs that Black, Brown, Indigenous people need. We just saw that space and that gap and wanted to fill that, as well as we work in mutual aid with other organizations, which is really important. Yeah. And we have a few sister organizations. Shout out to the Peace and Justice Center of Eastern Maine, Veterans for Peace, Needlepoint Sanctuary. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we know we can't do it alone. And we also know, where there is intersecting issues, we're going to need intersecting solution-based action. So
yeah. So just to back up a little bit, I think, right, you said something really important. You said we saw a need, right? We saw a need. And so I remember growing up, having things, right, my peer group at a young age was other adopted people of color. I know Desiree has talked a lot about her own cultural heritage and connecting with Indigenous communities, and we just, right, nothing existed like that for Black, Brown, Indigenous community members. I think to go to a space and
together, right? Like there's all these different spaces that are for Black community members alone or Indigenous community members alone, but we're all fighting the same fight. So we need a space for all those different community members together.
Yeah, and just things didn't exist, right? I think, right, if somebody faces an incident of, let's say, in the school system or on the bus or in the workplace or with their landlord and things like that, there's kind of a convoluted, like, maze of people in the phone book that people think they may be able to reach out to and might be able to help, or nobody really specializes in a multitude of, like, kind of diverse advocacy roles. So yeah, we just saw a lot of opportunity to kind of bring everything full circle and create not only like a holistic organization that supported the day-to-day needs of communities of color, but also the 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 societal expectations, right? We're all expected to work somewhere, to to for a lot of our members and a lot of community members are attending academic institutions, right? And there was nobody that filled that void to support people in the professional world or in like I said, their academic settings. So we saw an opportunity to develop something that really supported people in every phase of of their existence. And right, we have our own skill sets, and I think what's really made us successful is that if there's a need in the community that we can't meet, we will search and seek and find consultants, advocates, experts in those fields to support community members.
Yeah, and we meet people where they're at. If we have, our organization is run and co-founded by Black and Indigenous individuals of color, and we meet people where we're at. We have we all have differences. We all have different backgrounds, different beliefs, different places where we're at, right? And so we meet people where they're at. We do a lot of, the bulk of our work is decolonization work, but we do meet people where they're at, especially in healing, on people's journey towards their own cultural healing, their own coming back to themselves. And, we're just really excited about some of the programs and projects that we have, because you don't need to be in a specific space to be able to have access to some of these things. Well, if someone doesn't have, access to transportation, but they need food, we'll bring it to you. We'll get that to people. If people, don't have access to a space that is for cultural healing because it's so out of the way, we're creating a project where we can bring it closer to home for people. So then people can access space to have healing with Earth, but also being stewards of Earth and healing Earth too. And we're really excited for that project, our land back project, in terms of some Black liberation projects. We really see a need for Black community members to be able to gather together and not just through traumas. We have done rallies and protests, and we have gathered together in terms of inequality, but we want to be able to provide a space for healing as well, for community members who are extremely displaced, extremely exploited or marginalized, and
right.
Yeah.
I think so. When we did the rally, I can't count how many people came out and said, "Oh, I've never seen this many brown faces in one space." And so we saw a ton of community members that we hadn't seen, and they all right. It's not great to make assumptions, but I think we can in this space. They all were there for one kind of shared goal of community support, right? To grieve, to express their frustrations, to demand changes, and to do that in a collective space with other people of color, right? And so when we talk about healing, we talk about these projects, it's all really centered on having that community. I know one of the biggest struggles that we have as community members of color, especially in Maine, where we're so disconnected geographically, right? We have our traditional pockets where people kind of think that communities of color exist at a higher rate or maybe closer proximity to each other, and a place like Portland or Lewiston Auburn area, and even some of the college and university campuses. But for the most part, we are somewhat disjointed and disconnected. And one of the most healing experiences I've had is just being in the presence of other um, people of color, being able to let my guard down, being not having to, you know, really think about anything other than what the conversation is about or what the moment is. So that creates a great opportunity. I think most of our projects all have to center on education or healing or community. It gives us a lot of opportunities. I think it gives us opportunities for not only for us to grow and us to support our community members, but us to find other forms of healing that benefit people that we may not necessarily have considered initially. So just all part of trying to become an organization that really practices what we preach. Bringing in experts, being willing to change and evolve and challenge ourselves to be innovative and support our communities at the same time.
Yeah, and I'd say, the bulk of our work, like David said, is around, well, first off, we want to empower people to have, to do self-care work, but also we want to empower community care. And we do a lot of our work through a trauma-informed aspect. And so, we decided that we really wanted, kind of goes hand in hand with, well, all of our projects go hand in hand with the Land Back project, but we wanted to be able to not only provide education, or we wanted, like David said, a holistic healing. So we decided to put our skill sets together, our hobbies together, our interests together, and we're like, okay, let's do healing through art, healing through media, healing through being able to provide herbal blends. So we have kind of like this project or this line of medicines, herbal medicines, called Elder Rose Botanicals. So that's pretty new. We've already sent out some care packages with some tea blends, some CBD, essential oil rollers. So that's going to expand, to soaps and all different projects. Yeah. But it's pretty exciting, and we hope, essentially, right now a lot of our products are coming from, gathering. We have a lot of woods in Maine, so a lot of green space to gather medicines, but also getting medicines locally. And also David said he's an avid gardener, so a lot of the bulk of our medicines comes from David's garden. But we hope with the Land Back project we can expand for a space, especially because a lot of our different members have just different interests between archery and gathering, or could be cooking, or whatever it is. We want to be able to have a space for other people to come and just do all these interests together. We need each other in this time.
Yeah, no, it sounds so good. Like, right, this is my first time hearing, like, this came from gathering. This came from a garden, right? And then putting that in perspective of creating that space where people aren't asking for anything. People are asking for the opportunity to provide for their families and to implement traditional agricultural methods, to practice traditional activities, whether that's archery, whether that's gathering, whether that's exploring different architecture of structures and things like that, or educating ourselves on flora and fauna and wildlife in the state of Maine. Um, it's right. That's where everything comes back to is community members of color being able to exist, being able to thrive, being able to not have to worry, right? So we have in the state of Maine food insecurity, homelessness, unemployment, COVID-19 infection rates, incarceration rates, right? Every single one of those statistics, indigenous community members, black community members, right, consistently lead in every single one of those categories. And so this is, our mission is to reduce that, to give people the opportunity to address mental health issues and substance use and alcohol use disorders through alternative forms of healing and recovery, and reduce the recidivism rates. Create space for survivors of you know trauma and assault, and things like that, to use cultural healing modalities instead of traditional talk therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy or armchair psychology. Create space where community members of color who are struggling on a day-to-day basis have a voice and have an outlet, where they can express those concerns, instead of continuing to have their mental health deteriorate. And again, right, it's full circle. Create space where we can gather, we can hunt, we can grow, we can feed our community members struggling with food insecurity, and I think bringing it all together with having that mind, body, and spirit, being in unison, whether that's herbal blends and botanicals, and ensuring that your body is getting appropriate nutrition and detoxing and clarity and things like that, all the way to just being outside, right? It's just so important just to even take deep breaths of fresh air, get away from the TV and things like that. So
yeah, and I would say that, like I always repeat this when I'm on panels or podcasts or whatever. It's like my cacique George said, community doesn't just happen, it's built. And we really want this organization not to be, just your typical organization. We just want it to be a community. And a lot of this stuff is going to be built through just naturally, we don't want it to be built around trauma. Someone calls us, hey, my neighborhood that I live in is really racist, this, that, and the other. We don't want that to be the only way we build community. Unfortunately, it is. A lot of us are doing this work and are friends and are in community because surrounding trauma, but we really want to focus on, the other side of things, or socials and healings and ceremony, to bring us together. I mean, even just within the last months, being able to paint together brought new members into racial equity and justice. Just small things like that is really important. Building spaces and just our own toolbox of healing, and
we actually have done a lot. Not to cut you off, we have done a lot, right? We've been out in the garden, we've been out in the woods, like we've I've recently purchased a bow, right? You've been out doing a ton of stuff. We've put together care packages, you've painted, we've remodeled our space, right? We've done a lot, and so people always say, oh, you guys never take a day off, like, and you're always working, and it's like, right, and it's like, it's because we're working to build community and build a community based on a lot of these activities, right? And so even though we're doing a lot of this stuff 7 days a week,
And it's mostly because we want to tackle
Yeah.
both sides: the advocacy, the workplace consultant, so workplace trainings and workshops to make these spaces safer, proposals, all that. But because we're tackling both sides, that but also empowerment and support for our communities we identify with, it becomes a lot. We're definitely not taking a day off. Sometimes we get to here and there because that self-care is important, but for us, that community care is so important that we just want to build that foundation, so then it comes easier, and we can heal and relax and rest together. Really, it's we really want it to be a community feeling. It is hard when I think there's that feeling of when you take a day off, and then if other people aren't able to, because we're all pretty spread thin here, and so if if someone's doing an activity that's empowering or helping heal the community, we want to be there, we want to be part of it, but also vice versa. I know that working together towards these things is really important. So we are really happy for our network that when we do take a day off, or someone else takes a day off, there's people to step in. But it's taken a while for us to get to that point where we are able to do that, for sure.
Yeah, and we're Black and Indigenous every day of the week, and not just 9 to 5, but outside of that, right, we have families, and we're trying to create space for our families, right? I have 2 kids, trying to not only be a role model, leave a legacy, create, undo any of the negative things I've experienced, so my children don't have to go through that. But even more so than undoing, right? It's like everybody focuses on the negative, building opportunities for them in the future, right? I just and I don't think it's 50-50. I think we have 400 or 500 years of stuff we're cleaning up, but even within our own organization, we look forward so much, right? We don't have time to really go backwards. Like, we as co-founders, we've had disagreements, and we have to move on really quickly, right? And I think communities of color have always been resilient, and they've always moved on quickly, and we try to embody that philosophy. Like, our communities, our own personal mental health and things like that, we don't have time to live in the past and dwell. So we try to be as future oriented, as goal oriented as possible, because that's what we need, and that's what our communities need.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't even have time. Unfortunately, in our own communities, that's where we do see, as a result of colonialism and trauma and all, lack of self-development, whatever it is, we see, our own, like, just discourse within our own communities. And so when you're doing this work, I'm sure other people who are doing this work feel the same way. We don't have time or the capacity to be tearing each other down. We have to be building each other up, because this work is hard enough on its own. So when we're doing this work, it's constantly, like David said, looking forward, solution-based, taking that time to work things out, talk things out, and then keeping it moving for our future generations. And everything we do, is for the people, and also for our future generations. That could be like a logo on shirts that we make or something, but
right,
everything we do is
we do. We actually have some projects, right? Everything we do. Okay, I'm gonna
jot that down. But yeah, we're getting on 30 minutes here, so we'll wrap it up. But we're so thankful for the listeners out there. We hope that we can put out a podcast, every 10 days or something, consistent. And we also want to be able to share this space with other people doing really important work in the communities, whether it's in the state, or we can even do podcasts with people nationally. So yeah, we're really thankful for everyone who supports us. If you want to continue to find ways to support us, we in the future, I think we'll be taking some more volunteers. Right now, we have a lot of members that we need to work with and build more. But also, go to www.racialequityandjustice.org. We have a link to our donation link. So supporting us that way is really important. So we can continue to do this work and also redistribute that support out to the communities who need it.
I think you said it well. Yeah, support, right? We take support in a variety of ways. And right, first, people support us in their hearts and their minds and create space for us to do this work in, their organizations, their jobs, their workplaces and communities. And then obviously people can support us financially and with sweat equity and volunteering and things like that. But yeah, I think you said it well. I think so. Our next podcast, we'll probably talk a little bit more about maybe things in the community. We really want to focus on our community, but we will touch on things happening, throughout the state, national topics as well, regarding equity, diversity, justice for Indigenous communities, Black, Brown, people of color.
We'll also touch on Heritage Months, and not all of them are going to be as serious as this. This is just, we want to do an introduction, so it's pretty much all sticking to business. But hopefully, when we have guest speakers, we continue to do this, we can open up different topics, media topics, Heritage Month topics. So yeah, stay tuned, and we're really thankful for everyone listening so far.
Thank you.